Hello all, welcome to today's EHRC Samvad talk titled Ultrasound Image Guided Surgical Tool for Treating Hydrocephalus, Physics and Implementation by Mr. K.N. Ahish, currently with Open Silicon Inc. and a former student at IIIT Bangalore, and Professor Subhajit Sen from IIIT Bangalore. In this talk, the speakers will be telling us more about a common brain disease condition called hydrocephalus, which involves accumulation of excessive cerebrospinal fluid, CSF, in the brain, which normally requires surgery. Ahish and Dr. Sain will talk about their ultrasound-based tool that assists in insertion of a surgical catheter into the brain tissue to carefully drain out the fluid and relieve the brain pressure. They will also tell us more about the physics of ultrasound transducers through this talk. As for the speakers, Ahish is currently an engineer, VLSI at Open Silicon Inc., a C5 company. He completed his Master of Science by Research at IIIT Bangalore in July 2020. He had graduated with a BTech degree at Manipal Institute of Technology in Biomedical Engineering in 2017. In 2019, Ahish won the first prize at the poster competition for his poster at the TSS NIMHANS Knowledge Conclave 2019, held at NIMHANS during February 15-16 with new neurotechnologies as their theme. His poster was on ultrasound-based imaging tool and surgical methods done under the guidance of Professor Sain and Dr. Vikas Varel from NIMHANS. Professor Sain passed with BTech in Electronics Engineering from IIT Varanasi, formerly IIT BHU, an MS from Louisiana State University, and a PhD in Electrical and Computer Engineering from the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. Subsequent to his PhD studies until 2009, he had worked in the Indian semiconductor industry, Arcus Technologies, Cypress Semiconductors, Cirrus Logic, Saskin Communications, SIRF Technologies, etc. He has 2 US patents, and he was also an associate professor at Dhirubhai Ambani Institute of Information and Communication Technologies, Gandhinagar, between 2009 and 2013. And since then, he's been with us at IIIT Bangalore. So we welcome the speakers, and the stage is yours. Thank you.
This topic was introduced to us by Dr. Vikas of NIMHANS, and in the year in 2016-17, and so he gave this as a challenge, and we started the work then with a few MTech students. And the first difficulty we will so he gave this as a problem for this treating this hydrocephalus surgery, and this is a very common surgery that is done by neurosurgeons, and also there is a shortage of such skilled neurosurgeons in India. So he wanted a tool which would be able to assist accurately the insertion of catheters into tissues. So although this particular tool is specific to hydrocephalus, it can be generalized to other situations. For example, insertion of catheters to kidneys or liver, etc. So this was introduced to her, and he wanted a solution, and ultrasound was found to be the safest solution because of issues of radiation in the other modalities like CT or MRI. So and also it is a relatively cheap tool. So we started this work, and the first one difficulty we found initially was in the procurement of transducers. So we spent a lot of effort in transducers, and we were not getting them So we didn't even know where to go. And we started with Chinese transducers used for other applications. And we got some results. And then, but these were not good enough for our use, because they were giving us some response, echo response, which was spurious, okay, which would degrade our signal to noise ratio. So subsequently, we uh, we got hold of a manufacturer of this transducer from Mumbai. They are the only manufacturers of this. So we got one fabricated, and we have some results. And subsequently, we fabricated another transducer with the same company. And so there were many challenges to get to the point where Ahish is now. And I will let Ahish now explain the system that we have built here, okay, including the physics part of it. So here, one thing is that I have deliberately decided that we will explain a little bit about the physics, especially the physics of the transducer, the ultrasound transducer, how it is able to generate the ultrasound wave and direct it in a particular direction. So that and the simulation of that using a particular field tool developed by a university in Netherlands. So I wanted to concentrate more on that aspect and less on some of the other aspects. Okay, over to you, Ahish.
Thank you, Professor Sen and Professor Jaya. So this has been my thesis. I've done my thesis on the same topic as well. Um, so let's just get started. So medical ultrasound has been there from a long time, especially but limited to diagnostic purposes. They have been used to image all parts of the human body, many from the surface of the human body, unlike as well as CT and MRI. So once when we had this, when we had the option of choosing a modality for this specific purpose of imaging the cranium, I mean inside the cranium of human body, we directly went the ultrasound was the best option, considering considering the massive size of MRI and radiation problems with CT. So predominantly how ultrasound works is it sends a sound wave uh, at very high frequencies and gathers echoes from which would be generated from from the interior tissues of the human body. So for example, I'll just give you an idea of the echo here. So you can see in the animation that there is an ultrasound wave passing through two types of medium. So A1, A2, and A1 again. So there are two interactions where the ultrasound gets reflected. The reflected wave is the echo. So a rough approximation of the amount, the strength of the signal which gets reflected is characterized by the reflection coefficient. So that's how it works. So our objective was to build a device from scratch, build the transducer and also the hardware part, and get an echo signal displayed on our screen. Initially, our idea was to build a prototype. So we had to understand a lot of things. One was to understand how ultrasound interacts with human tissues. Already there had been a lot of research done, but we had to get some practical knowledge so that we could do it in our lab at Play TV. So we started off with understanding the target areas of our particular problem. So so that's the reason we had to understand what is the ultrasonic characteristic of the brain tissue, the CSF, the ventricles. So as you all know, brain, central processing unit of the body, and since it's the main central processing unit, it consumes a lot of energy, and blood being one of the sources of energy to it, but not the only one. There are other sources as well. Um, there is a different system called the ventricular system inside the human body. You can see in the lower animation where um blood doesn't flow. There is a fluid which is almost salty water like fluid which flows. um, the human body has evolved to um, absorb nutrients from this fluid. This fluid is called the cerebrospinal fluid. So there are nutrients, there are salts, there are all kinds of nutrients which gets absorbed from the inside of the brain, and so there is production of this CSF and also drainage. So there is this complete loop where some quantity of CSF is produced. It flows through these ventricles. You can see these C-shaped horns, which look like horns inside the human body. So there are 4 different ventricles. I won't go into naming all of them, but this predominantly anatomically captures the flow of CSF within the human brain. So what happens is in a specific case called hydrocephalus, the production, the pathway, and the absorption. So in this loop, um, something gets blocked, or if CSF is produced more or absorbed less, or there's a blockage in the ventricles, or so when something goes wrong, in this particular case of hydrocephalus, the CSF starts accumulating within these ventricles, and and it starts swelling. So here is an example. So this is the normal ventricles, which may look that's the size of a normal ventricle, but during during hydrocephalus, it swells up to very large volume. So because of this, what happens is, since brain is encapsulated by the skull, which is very hard, the bone is very hard, and there is pressure building up from the inside of the brain. So the brain tissues are under pressure from the inside. So this is extremely dangerous. There are small capillaries which are present on the surface of the brain, which get clotted, and so many others. This is a very severe medical condition. So surgery. So the solution is to somehow relieve the pressure. So to do that, um, um, neurosurgeons perform a surgery, and according to the statistics given by our Indian Medical Association, and also doctors in NIMHANS, this is very common. They see around 30 cases in a few days. That's the vague numbers which they had given us when they had come out to IIITB. So, and it is common across all age groups also. So this surgery involves drilling a hole as small as possible in the skull, and after that they insert a catheter so that it directly hits the ventricle. And note that they can't see the ventricle from the outside because the brain tissues are opaque. So what they do is they take diagnostic measures. So they try to predict the exact position of the swollen ventricles by taking MRI imaging, CT, and then using their experience, they insert the catheter after drilling the hole at a particular angle, and um, so so that it hits the ventricle. But this takes experience. So what happens is, in many of the cases, it fails to hit the ventricle. Um, it pierces the ventricle very lightly, or fails to hit the ventricle. So what happens that time is unnecessary brain tissue damage is done, and that is also not acceptable. There are other further complications because of such a initial failure. So the problem statement was to make a device, or at least guide this surgery using some image guiding technique. So what our idea was that to use ultrasound, design a very small cylindrical circular probe which could fit in the hole made in the skull, which is part of the surgery, and also be able to give the surgeons a facility where they can insert the catheter. Um, and you may wonder what happens to the excess CSF which was produced inside. That excess CSF is drained. They put uh, a a shunt, a CSF controlling tube with a valve. They connect it from the CSF. They put it under the skin and send it to the abdominal areas, so that there is they bypass the CSF flow. They bypass the natural mechanism of the CSF flow. That's the part of the procedure. So initially what we thought was, we'll make a probe which looks something like this. So we thought we'll make a ultrasound transducer probe which has a hole in it. It's called an annular probe, and the exact specification of the catheter was 3 mm, and the neurosurgeons told that the hole should not exceed 8 mm. So with all the specification, our idea was to make something like this. But we wanted to see, would this work? How well would this probe work compared to a normal circular probe? So before designing, sending it to fabrication, we wanted to understand what is since there is a hole at the middle, what would be the nature of the ultrasound field it generates, and would it degrade the echoes which are produced and captured by our electronic systems. So that's the reason we used a simulation program called Field 2. It's a MATLAB based. It's a program that runs on MATLAB, and it has been it's an open source. It's not open source. It is free to use program. So what it's so the whole ultrasound wave equations, the propagation equations, the way ultrasound interacts with matter, all the mathematical equations were approximated using linear system theory. That is the foundation of this software, this program. So to put it in a nutshell, I won't go deep into how the software was made, but I'll give you a very brief info in a nutshell. It's it's very similar, if similar to signal processing concept, where what they do is they characterize an ultrasound transducer by something called a spatial impulse response. So what after approximating the wave equation, They have shown that um, by by they've shown that they could characterize any two-dimensional transducer surface using its response to a Dirac delta function. So, and that response of a transducer, when it is triggered by a very sharp uh, signal, is called the spatial impulse response. So the spatial impulse response is very specific to the geometry of the transducer. As the transducer changes, the shape changes, the shape of the spatial impulse response changes in time and in space. So what um, so predominantly how the software works is we have to create a transducer surface and discretize it. So if you want here for example I've shown a very bad discretization of a continuous circular transducer surface just to show that it discretizes the surface, but we could we, cou- we could discretize it using even smaller squares. So what it does is it calculates the algorithm runs for each particular square which has been discretized to mimic the circular nature of the transducer. If we are trying to calculate the ultrasound field for a circular transducer, so 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 these were the two transducers which we tried, and this tool is very versatile. We realized that we could get 2D images of and perform beamforming, all other advanced concepts which are already present in the industry. We could see the tool simulate all these scenarios, and we have also done some um, simulations and which I'll be showing later. So to characterize the transducer, what we did was we ran this algorithm on these two different transducer surfaces, and this is a plot we got. This is a plot which encapsulates several plots. So we could the tool allows us to fix the frequency of operation, the size, shape very precisely of the transducer. Um, so the x-axis indicates the axial distance from the transducer. That is the distance of an object present from the face of the transducer. So I had calculated the strength of the echo received by the transducer as the point sized object has been placed at different depths varying from 0 to 200 mm, so 0 to 20 centimeters. And we had for a we had calculated using our hand calculations that around at around 50 centimeter 5 centimeters we would get a very sharp response, and that's exactly what the simulation also shows here. You can see that the peak is at around 55 centimeters, and so the same thing, this is piston transducer is also known as the circular transducer. Both are same. And so the what we wanted to see was if we make a hole inside the transducer, would this focus the uh, the the depth at which there will be maximum echo, would this point change? So it has not changed. We realized that it was almost same. So there was a few of variation, but that is okay because the neurosurgeons at NIMHANS told us that the swollen ventricles, we can't really judge at the depth at which they are, because it varies by person, it varies by degree of the problem, and so on and so forth. So approximately around 4 to 5 centimeters would be great. That's what they're told. So the ultrasound is a very so it's not a very sharp beam. When we generate an ultrasound, the ultrasound doesn't go straight like light. It spreads. It spreads like a ripple in water. It's exactly like ripples in water. So um, so the physics tells us that, so when an ultrasound is generated using many transducers, many slits of transducers, there are all different unnecessary um, parts of the wave. The main wave of interest is the region where it is almost straight. There are other side lobes which are generated because of continuous interference between as the wave propagates in the medium. There is also this grating lobe. If we are using small slices of transducer array, it's called an array transducer, but that would not be a big issue here, because we are using a single solid piston annular transducer. So a very vague approximation of to identify or to characterize the ultrasound beam is the Fresnel and Fraunhofer zones. These are nothing but the near field and the far field. So as ultrasound propagates, predominantly there is a lot of variations in the pressure as it propagates. It creates a lot of variations in pressure in the near field, as in very close to the transducer surface. And at one point in space, you can see there is this image showing that there's a focal zone. At that point, the ultrasound is highly concentrated. And after that comes the far field, where the ultrasound diverges, like similar to how water diverges when you drop a stone, the ripples of the water. um, so this focal zone, or it's called the focus, is very important. We made sure that we have a focus at around 4 to 5 centimeters, because since the ultrasound is very concentrated there, we'll get a very good echo. We won't get a broad echo, we'll get a sharp echo. So, we wanted and the location of the focus depends on the transducer shape, its size predominantly, and also the frequency of the ultrasound. So this is what we had done. And we had also simulated an array of transducer. If you in this diagram, you could see that there is a transducer which has pink stripes. These are all small piezoelectric ultrasound transducers, independent transducers, and we just simulated this condition to get an image. And so you can see that so there is this dark and light blue regions, where this is a very old technique where they use 128 or 256 independent transducers to get an image. What they do is they fire this fire 10 or 15 neighboring ultrasound transducers within the array, and they record the response, and they go for the next 5 or 10. and so they get lines of echoes, and they merge all the lines to get an image. And that's what we did using this tool. We mimic this scenario uh, in field 2 and saw these images. So this was on the left side, left and right, both are the same, are the output images of the same scenario, where the left side you can see, since the lighter area and the darker, so there are two areas, lighter shade and the darker shade. The lighter shade is kind of stretched out. That is because the particles in this region are not hit by an ultrasound. The particles in this region are hit by the ultrasound, which is broad, in nature. So it generated an echo or an image where it is kind of smudged. But the interface of the two area is fine, because that there lies the focus of the probe. So there are many techniques to. The literature showed that there are many techniques. They've already proved all that. So we just wanted to see how all this works. And so what they do is they weight the ultrasound surface. They use a Gaussian weighting, and to remove all the artifacts created by the side lobes and the grating lobes. So with that, that's called apodization, and with apodization, it's a much better image. So we ran the same program for a different model, for a different medium. So now coming to, so that is the simulation part. So predominantly we understood that the focus is not going to change for a piston transducer or an annular transducer. With minor tweaks in frequency, or also, or the keeping the frequency of operation the same. So now I'll explain the electronics part of the ultrasound of a typical ultrasound imaging system, where there is a high voltage source to trigger the ultrasound transducers. These ultrasound transducers are piezoelectric transducers. So whenever a voltage is applied across them, there is they deform in shape, and when the voltage is removed, they come back to normal. So that's how the piezoelectric principle works. So they've used this to generate mechanical waves. So to generate ultrasound mechanical waves, we just have to give a particular frequency of electric signal. So usually medical ultrasound is performed in the range of megahertz. That's because the particles in the human tissues are very tiny, and they want a very high resolution and also good enough penetration to image objects which are well deep inside our body. So a reference signal is generated. Here you can see there is a yellow arrow which generates a reference, a low voltage signal of say 10 megahertz. So there is this block called high voltage pulsar, which amplifies the low voltage signal into a very high voltage, typically around 60 volts or 100 volts. In our case, we had supplied it with plus or minus 30, so a peak to peak of 60 volts. So another nice thing about ultrasound imaging system is that there is no transmitter and receiver separately. They both are incorporated in the same transducer, as in the same single. So it's a transceiver. So it emits and also receives. So there is this switch after the red arrow. You can see there is a switch. The high voltage pulsar is the pulses are given to the transducer. It generates an echo, and when it receives, the switch diverts the signal to the echo processing block. So all these sub blocks we have designed in our lab. We understood how to use this high voltage pulsar chip, the board, the ultrasound transducer, the TR switch. The switch is called a transmit receive switch, or in short TR switch. And then since the echo signals are 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 very tiny, as in their amplitude is very low, because um, the variations in our human body is not very crystal clear. There is not, there is no, the variation is not as predominant as water and a solid object. They're almost like they're since the body is almost of made of predominantly of water, they're all the variations within the body are have a very uniform acoustic impedance. So the echo signals are very tiny, and also because the ultrasound signal attenuates as it goes through any medium. The ultrasound signal it loses its energy in the form of heat. So by the time it reaches the target location, the energy is significantly lower. So and a part of that energy is reflected back. So the echo signal is extremely has very low energy in it. So when this echo signal hits the transducer surface again, it produces an electric signal. That's the echo. And so since it is of very low amplitude, we have used a analog front end block, which is a amplifier which is made of analog circuitry, and it's an amplifier which amplifies this small signal by without adding much noise, electronic noise to it, and also it filters out a lot of noise from the echo signal. So after our challenge was in building this system of receiving this echo, and then from converting it from the analog domain to the digital domain, and then using algorithms or using filters to make it to at least get the peak of the echo. So we used an AFE, analog front end. So in this echo processing block, whatever I'm telling is inside this echo processing block. So after the AFE, so we had to understand the working of the AFE. Then it had an analog to digital converter within it, and it, so the digital signals came out of the AFE. So typically, for example, if you say that there is the ultrasound transducer, ultrasound medical ultrasound, for this particular case, we ran it at 10 megahertz. So the AFE sampled it with 40 megahertz clock, and the resolution was 16 bits. So the rate at which data was coming out, the rate at which the bits were coming out of the AFE almost reaches 1 gigabits per second, in the range of gigabits per second. So we couldn't use any normal computer or embedded system processor to receive this high speed data which was coming out of the AFE. So we had to use something called an FPGA so FPGAs are basically They stand for field programmable gate arrays, where digital circuits can be created by writing code into it. Uh, Unlike the ASIC counterparts, where circuit is already fabricated and nothing can be changed inside it. So the FPGAs are chips where the circuitry inside it can be changed. So the FPGAs were used because it is pretty fast. So and we designed, so whatever echo processing, all the processing has to be done in hardware. So that's one more challenge of using a FPGA. Unlike a normal processor where C code or any MATLAB code, any high level code can be written, implementing a filter, implementing all signal processing algorithms. The difficult part of FPGA is to write. We have to implement all these signal processing algorithms in hardware. So that's where that is predominantly the work I've done. And then the FPGA block will in FPGA block there are, what I had implemented was something called an IQ demodulator. It's a specialized filter to remove a lot of to remove the noise present in the digitized version of the echo. Even after the AFE analog front end removes a lot of noise, there is still a lot of noise present. To increase the signal to noise ratio, I had implemented an IQ demodulator. It's a filter, and then the prototype had a system where the same the captured echo from the FPGA was displayed. So this encapsulates our system, prototype system. We had an experimental setup to mimic the hydrocephalus ventricles. There was water and oil. We made sure that their acoustic impedance difference is exactly same as the acoustic impedance difference between brain tissue and CSF. Um, so you can see that there is this pulsar chip, um, which is connected to the transducer. So there is so high voltage signal goes through the arrow which connects the experimental setup and the pulsar chip, both the high voltage signal and the echo, and the same analog signal is sent to the AFE. You can see there is a small blue arrow towards the left, in the left direction, and the um, and the digit and the data converted into the digital world is sent to the FPGA. So all these were controlled using the computer. There were softwares which came along with the board um, to configure these chips. So these chips are very versatile. They have a lot of functionality. So there are 8 channels in them and all that. So we controlled it using our computers, and the FPGA we wrote code in to synthesize circuits within the FPGA, implementing our filters and all the signal processing blocks. And also it was a challenge to correctly receive the high speed data signals which are coming into the FPGA, without trying to avoid all the skew and all the problems created by the electronic channels between the high speed boards, where especially this is very typical in related in signals which are above or in the range of gigabits per second. So this is just the setup of all the boards. So our intention was to first try out with the prototype boards, and then ultimately make a system where all these boards would be merged into a single small board. So this is so I could only achieve the prototype setup in my thesis. So this is the result. I've just taken it directly from my thesis. Um, so you can see in this previous image that in this experimental setup there is a transducer at an angle. So the same setup we used to tilt the transducer, keep it at three different angles, -5, 0, and +5. So these were the echo signals which we received at the end of our by the FPGA system. So you can see that at 0 degree there is a sharp peak. There are two peaks actually. One is because of, so in the balloon in the balloon system there are two surfaces the ultrasound interacts with. One is water oil interaction and another is oil water. So you can see here that it's quite a small image, but so we made sure that the balloon, we tried to mimic the hydrocephalus conditioned cranium as much as possible. We kept the balloon at an appropriate height, typically around 4 to 5 centimeters, and the size is also around 4 to 4 centimeters or above. And so we used till oil. So we packed the balloon with till oil inside, and since the oil tries to float, come above the water, we packed it in a balloon and tied it to the bottom of the container so that it would float. It would be in one position. So so that's the experimental setup part. So I think that's the finish of my presentation, Professor. Thank you. If you have
Okay.
any questions, you can please feel free to ask me now.
Yes. Okay. So as you can see, the work involved a few different domains. Acoustic domain, simulation of the acoustic domain, which is electromechanical, and then the electronic domains. So it is a multi-domain project, which was the very interesting part of the project.
Yes, sir.
And we were able to get a very crude, I would say, a prototype where we showed the principle, that there is a principle and there is still a lot of work required to improve this. Okay, and even before some productization is going to happen. So if there are any questions, please, I can see one question from Professor Ashok. Ahish, you can take this.
Sure, sir.
What is the typical value of the pressure amplitude of the acoustic wave? And the second is what would be the value of the mechanical index in your case?
Oh, right.
Ahish, you want to take it up?
I don't. It's there in my thesis. I've comprehensively explained it in my thesis, but right now I can't remember these values. I've in fact comprehensively made sure that the intensity values, the ISTPA, and there are several other intensity parameters which we simulated in field 2. I just didn't put all this content in this presentation because I would have to explain all these terms and I didn't want to make it complicated. But so there is this. So what Professor Ashok is asking is that so there are safety concerns also in ultrasound because the ultrasound, when it propagates, the energy is dissipated in the form of heat. So there is this thermal index and mechanical index. These are the two parameters used to limit the ultrasound energy, so that so as to keep the values of these parameters within a threshold, so that there is not a lot of heat generated, and also there is not a lot of mechanical stress on the when ultrasound propagates within the human tissue. So, so in fact, we had simulated all that and made sure that it is um, within the threshold. And also, according to the norms, there is according to the Indian. The values I don't remember, but we had also made an effort to find what is the threshold. We could only find it from the FDA specifies it. The Indian Medical Association doesn't. So,
So let me try to answer Professor Ashok's question in a little bit different way.
yeah.
The standard reference for measuring sound is what is called SPL, expressed in dB milliwatt. I think.
Spatial
So SPL.
pulse length.
SPL, and then so suppose you transmit at 0 dB, 0 dBm. I think this 0 dBm is large. Maybe you might give 10, -10 or -20 dB, and the full after the echo is received, the attenuation could be as much as 120 dB. So the back and forth, because as the sound propagates through the tissues, it attenuates with distance, and there's an alpha associated, and that because of that 120 dB. So the received echo will be of -100 to 120 dB in the full range. In our case, it is likely to be much smaller, but because our depth is only few centimeters. Okay, so up to 10 centimeters, but in typical ultrasound, it is much, 120 dB is good. Okay, then Shubhayu has asked, is it possible to repurpose an existing medical ultrasound machine?
Yes.
Okay, by changing transceiver head module,
Yes.
using some. This is a very interesting question.
It
He's
is
the best person to ask.
Yeah, in fact, we tried to do all that, but the ultrasound industry is extremely protective of its of all its IPs. It might be software, hardware, ultrasound hardware, anything. They're extremely protective about it, and not even the medical ultrasound industry is extremely valuable, and they make sure nothing is anyway hackable to any DIYers or intentional hackers. So, in fact, there is already a system which the predominant research, ultrasound research, is happening only in all the high-end companies, Philips, GE, healthcare, and all that. In the academic world, there's not a lot of people working on medical ultrasound, and predominantly since along with this physics part, the transducer part, it also deals with the FPGA part. So it comes to the domain of high-speed digital design. So that's the reason it's not very quite popular within the academic world also, especially in India. So we tried doing this medical, we tried to repurpose, we tried to use an ultrasound probe produced by Shimadzu, and we couldn't get the pinout of the ultrasound transducer. So that's how secure they are. So leave alone the software hardware part, even the probe, we couldn't get a data sheet for the probe, which of some company of Shimadzu. We also had a Philips probe given by Dr. Vikas from his hospital. We couldn't even they have gone up to extents where we can't even see the metal pins which are coming out of the probe. They're so tiny, and so that's the reason we had to produce our own transducer with our own trying to understand our own research. Yes, sir.
Ashish, next question is, how different is your overall design from a modern abdomen scanning ultrasound machine?
So for scanning different areas of the human body using ultrasound, different probes are used. The system remains the same, although different transducers are designed for different areas. So for abdominal scanning, since the depth is high, as in the depth of abdominal regions of whatever the target areas are high, the typical operating frequencies of these probes are lower. That is, the transducer is manufactured in such a way that it has a frequency response um, maxing out or peaking at a lower frequency. Unlike
That is because there is higher attenuation with frequency.
correct, and
Increasing
there
frequency.
increase in frequency. There is higher attenuation as frequency increases, but they want to perform get echoes from deeper regions of the human body. So they're reducing the frequency to reduce the attenuation. So apart from so conceptually, apart from the transducers, the system remains same. That's it. So that's the reason you can see ultrasound machines having different transducer probes within the same system, having different transducer probes.
Okay, so how did you model the acoustic properties of the brain and CSF using oil and water to program the FPGA for post-processing?
So there is already data present in many journals on the acoustic impedance of brain tissue and the acoustic impedance of CSF. So what we did was we calculated the acoustic impedance difference between these two tissues and
Okay,
searched.
so he has clarified it. How well does the liquid like water model it?
Liquid
So,
like water model it. So the objective here is not to match brain tissue with water on CSF with oil. It's not that. It is to match the acoustic impedance difference. So so the difference in acoustic impedance between brain and CSF, say it's a particular number, and we searched for objects, two objects which could match, whose acoustic impedance difference could match this number. That's how we chose water and till oil. All other oil, coconut and all this oil were um, didn't have that value. So till, which is kind of thicker, it came to have. So the reason why we are matching the acoustic impedance difference is that we wanted the reflected echo to have the same strength as it would have in a real scenario where brain and CSF.
we are done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a great talk and great work as well. We
Thank you,
hope you
ma'am.
can continue more on these lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, sir.
everybody.